get started now as we've got a very packed agenda. Before we get into hearing from some expert speakers about accessibility and procurement, I wanted to quickly take you through the Sustainable Procurement Pledge. My name is Will Ennett, and I'm one of the UK Core Chapter members, and coming to you from my home office wearing a white shirt. So the SPP started back in 2020, the Sustainable Procurement Pledge, with the goal to really drive positive environmental and social outcomes within procurement. And very specifically, the organization has a goal to have 1 million procurement professionals commit to this pledge by 2030. It's a free pledge to take, and anyone can take it. You don't have to, it's not part of an organization. If you would like to get involved in the work that we do, we'll be sharing some links on the chat about both the SPP, the Sustainable Procurement Pledge, and upcoming events, how to sign the specific pledge, and also more details about our UK chapter. So we're all volunteer-led, and today you'll hear from myself, Will, Joe, and Claire, but Seb, Caroline, and Janet are also part of the UK chapter. We organise both in-person and online events throughout the year. So join our LinkedIn group to find out more about that. And you'll also be able to see through SPP other groups based around various themes or industry sectors. So I do hope to see you at an upcoming event. And with that, I will pass you over to Claire to welcome everyone to this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. So as Will said, I'm Claire Brogdorf. I head up the procurement team here at Sage. I'm a white female, I have shoulder-length brown hair, and I'm wearing glasses and a blue top today. And I am really proud to present this webinar on behalf of the Sustainable Procurement Pledge UK Chapter in collaboration with Sage and the Business Disability Forum. And I'm delighted to be joined by a panel of experts to introduce you to the topic of accessible procurement. Helen Baker, who is Global Director of DEI and Wellbeing at Sage, who's going to introduce us to the topic of accessibility. Katie Coates, who's a Senior Disability Business Partner at the Business Disability Forum, will then talk us through the BDF's procurement toolkit, followed by Martin Foames, IT Architect here at Sage, who's going to share how Sage is incorporating accessibility criteria into the procurement of IT solutions. And finally, Ruby Elliott, who is an apprentice in our procurement team, is going to share some practical tips on what we can all do to become more accessible in how we work. So why have we chosen the topic of accessible procurement, and what does it have to do with sustainable procurement? What is the link between accessibility and sustainability? There is lots of focus on decarbonisation, human rights and biodiversity, all quite rightly, but where does accessibility come in? Accessibility is an important component of the S in ESG, ensuring that everyone can fully participate in society, making sure products and processes support equitable opportunities. Accessibility is also a fundamental human right recognised by the international frameworks like the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. From a business perspective, companies which prioritise accessibility mitigate legal and reputational risks and demonstrate ethical leadership. Yet another example, as if we need one, of how sustainability makes good business sense. And at Sage, our objective is to ensure that accessibility is integral to everything we do for our colleagues, our customers, and all our other stakeholders. From a personal perspective, when Helen first introduced the topic of accessibility to me as part of her work here at Sage, I must admit I hadn't really given it much consideration, particularly in relation to myself or within the context of procurement. Now, I've worn glasses for years, and I never thought of them as an example of an adjustment that we often take for granted. Most people use them to achieve equal visual experiences. Let us substitute the concept of glasses with software accessibility. The procurement team essentially becomes the optician, advocating for colleagues by ensuring they receive seamless accessibility in the tools that they use. Without prioritising accessibility during the process, some colleagues may find themselves excluded. Now, it's inconceivable to deny someone the opportunity to wear glasses, so similarly, we must strive to integrate accessibility more effectively into our processes. My entire team was hugely motivated and inspired by the session with Helen, and I'm confident you will feel the same after hearing from our panel today. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Helen.
Hello, I'm going to think about these glasses in a completely different way now. Thank you, Claire. So, hi, everybody. My name's Helen. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Visually today, my hair's a bit scruffy. I've got my glasses on my head. I'm a little bit pink from the sunshine that we've had in Newcastle, which is like never happens. And I'm wearing a green flowery top. So let's get into it, right? I'd really love to understand, if we go on to the next slide, the word disability, what that actually means for you, please. So if you could start tapping on the keyboards in the chat, what comes to your minds when you think of that term disability? Let's warm ourselves up. I'm just going to have a little look, and if Ruby, you can keep an eye on it for me as well. Limitations. Oh, that's an interesting one. Okay, that's good. Any more? Physical disability, yeah, absolutely. Differences in abilities, brilliant. Yes, adjustments. Yes, we've just done some work in Sage with adjustments. Assumptions. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for connecting on the topic for me. So I'm going to set the scene just so that we're all on the kind of same page. But disability for us, when we're talking about it today, is the experience of not being able to take part in society because of the barriers you face with your conditions and impairment. And you're right, some of you have already caught the fact that actually conditions might be visible, non-visible, they might be acquired or from birth, permanent, temporary, life-limiting, physical, emotional, a mixture of all of those things. But, and I'm going to impress my son here massively, who's 14, in the words of a Marvel character, Thanos in Endgame, inevitable, right? Disability is inevitable in some way, whether we're interacting with family, friends, parents as they age, or ourselves in our own aging process. At some point, we are going to be impacted by something, whether we describe ourselves as disabled or not. There will be something that we cannot achieve in the same way that we used to be able to. So with that kind of firmly in our minds, let's discuss something that's quite pivotal, I think, in terms of how we think about disability, right? And this is something called the social model of disability. So I'm going to take the opportunity to share that with you. Mike Oliver in 1983 came up with this kind of model and concept, and actually it's starting to become really transformational from a kind of social perspective in terms of how we think about it in our organisations. But I'm going to let some colleagues from Scope actually describe that to you in the next video for about 3 minutes so that you can get a sense of how it impacts and how it makes people feel. So if you could play the video for me, brilliant. Wow. I mean, whenever I listen to that video and watch that video, it always really impacts me quite heavily, because I suddenly feel the weight of the responsibility about what it is that I need to do, that actually I am part of the problem, right? Because if I am not, uh, um, if I'm not intentionally building PowerPoint decks that are accessible, if I'm not intentionally thinking about accessibility during hiring, if I'm not thinking about it in terms of the opportunities that I'm sharing, or in the IT even that I'm procuring for vast numbers of people across the organisation, then I am actually part of the problem. I am a barrier in itself. And just remember that phrase: people are disabled by barriers in society and not by their impairment or difference. And actually, I think another kind of opportunity in there that resonates with me is actually when we're all together, we can make a change happen. And I think that's what we're all doing here today. So I can't thank you enough for joining us on this journey and helping to make a change, because I hope that this is going to be the nudge that you need in order to go back to your organisations and say, hey, we want to actually do something different here. So we now have got a real sense of the social model, what it is. We understand a bit more about disability. So now I want us to really truly understand what accessibility is, because then we can actually start to drive those actions, which Katie is going to helpfully share with us in a moment. So a little story. A few years ago, I just got into this role and I decided that I wanted to help to make our web pages more accessible. I'd had a couple of colleagues tell me that they found those difficult. After much back and forth, I did some research. I found an overlay tool, and an overlay tool gives you an extra toolbar on a website to help. And I thought, right, this is it. I'm going to get the IT teams engaged in this. And sorry, Martin, if you were part of this discussion at the time. I think you were. And the bit that I was focused on was equal access. So if we could just build the slide one for me. Equal access was everything that I was concerned about, right? But it wasn't happening. The IT teams weren't delivering this for me, and I couldn't understand why, until a very helpful usability expert told me, Helen, but it's not just equal access you want, it is also, and if you could build the slide for me to reveal the surprise, equal interaction. Okay, because what we're trying to aim for with accessibility is that there is one experience that is flexible for everybody. And whether that be in your PowerPoint decks, the documents you issue, in your websites and website design, it's so important that we get this concept of universal design across to everybody, because then we know what we're trying to aim for, right? We're not just trying to get equal access and provide separate opportunities for people to consume things. We're trying to make sure that everything we procure, everything that we offer is accessible to everybody first time round, and that it's flexible to their needs. Okay, so what I'd like to find out from you all now is, what proportion of UK organisations do you think are thinking about accessibility in this way within their strategies right now? So if you could put some percentages in the chat for me, what proportion of UK businesses do you think are focusing on this right now? 20%, 30%. Some of you are close there. So the answer is actually about 19%. So AbilityNet did a survey in 2022. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that's crept up a little bit as ESG has become more kind of prolific in organisations. But approximately a quarter of organisations only are considering this really strategically within their procurement strategies. Right, that gives us massive opportunity to do more, doesn't it? It gives us that differentiator, that ability to be competitive in the marketplace by introducing this as a concept into our procurement strategies. Okay, so now we're really equipped. We've now got all of these concepts on board. If you could just go to the next slide for me. So I'd really love you to tell me, well, I've shared it already, it's okay. So actually all of these things on here will give us the business case, right? The business case is that whenever we design accessibility into anything that we do, it's not just benefiting the 24% of people that the census tells us have a disability, it's actually benefiting 100% of us. These are just a few examples that were originally designed from an accessibility perspective that have universal appeal. maybe not so much the typewriter, but we're talking there about the fact that that's evolved into a keyboard, which is used on absolutely everything now in order to spare people originally from having to write when they found that difficult. And now you can see all of these services and products, and there'll be thousands more that are now, it's part of our day-to-day, our business as usual, if you like. So the business case is that this will affect, it's just smart business. It will affect everybody to be more efficient, more productive in our organisations when we give this some intentional thought. Okay, so finally, what I'd like from you all is, and the key takeaways are on the screen, but let's have a think. We did a poll earlier, and if we could just have a quick look at the poll, see what the results are, to find out how many of you in your organisations are actually doing it. Can I see the poll results? Have a look. It's a bit of a surprise for me. It's just loading. So that's really exciting. Is it 50? My eyesight's not very good. 59%. 59%. So that's much more positive than the kind of 25% mark that we were talking about. So that's great. But there's still, potentially at least 40% of us that really would like to know more and would like to be doing more. So that gives me the opportunity now to introduce you to Katie. Sage have been partnered with the Business Disability Forum for a really long time now, 3 or 4 years, because we don't just know this stuff, we have to build our skill set too so that we can embed it across our organisation. So I'm going to hand over to Katie with some top tips, Katie, I think from you to help us to get better at this work.
Thanks so much, Helen. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on the call today. Really important topic to discuss. As Helen said, I am the Lead Senior Disability Business Partner, longest job title in the world, here at BDF. So I'm going to talk to you just a bit around some of the top tips. So some of the things that you can do, you can be doing in the procurement space, or to encourage others to kind of prioritise and think about that procurement space. Next slide, please. So who are BDF? You may have heard of us, you may not have done, but we are the leading business membership organisation in disability inclusion. We support nearly 600 businesses. I think we're just over 600 businesses now, based in the UK, but the majority have some sort of global reach as well. And in lots of different ways, we provide expert, tailored, trusted advice and support on disability inclusion as it affects businesses. Next slide, please. So why does it matter? Why does disability smart procurement even matter at all? So an estimated 1.3 billion people globally, and 1 in 5 people in the UK have a disability. The majority of those disabilities or health conditions are acquired during working life. So when you're thinking about the disabled people within your organisation, you should be thinking about not only the disabled people that you know that work for you already, but the ones that you're going to hire, the people that may acquire a disability or health condition while they're working for you. It's also really important to remember that about 90% of disabilities are either less visible or non-visible. Chances are you work with a lot more disabled people than you know of. So disability smart procurement means making sure that the products and services you procure meet the needs of all users, including those with disabilities. You're not alone if you face changes in the procurement space. So even the most mature organisations we work with, the real industry leaders in disability inclusion, they still struggle with procurement. So it can be absolutely exceptional internally. Everything that you build internally, everything that you provide for your colleagues and your teams internally can be absolutely exceptional, but we know that that still falls short in a lot of areas where we're buying products and services in, especially evident, throughout all industries and at all levels of maturity when it comes to disability inclusion. So the fact that everyone struggles with procurement shouldn't just be something that we accept, right? It shouldn't just mean everybody's in that position. Some of the biggest and best in the disability inclusion space also struggle with it. So it's one that we can kind of forget about. It means that prioritising it is absolutely essential. It makes competitive business sense, as well as making sure that we're supporting the needs of disabled and neurodiverse colleagues throughout the entire business, not just in the bits that we've got 100% ownership of. It's not about being perfect. So any progress is progress. You don't need to, you know, redesign every single process at every single level immediately and get it all perfect for everybody. That's not the ask. That's not the, you know, realistic request. And we have to think about sustainability when we're building that in. But it's important to remember that we're all learning, we all started somewhere. Disability inclusion as a whole is a journey for all of us in procurement space, but also in disability inclusion in general. This is still a journey and we're all still learning. I've worked in the disability space since 2016, and in 2023, when I joined BDF, we were asked to build a presentation for our second stage interview. So I put absolutely every piece of knowledge that I had on the topic on a slide deck and talked it through with the interviewers. And I actually looked back at it the other day because I'm in the process of building some resources for my team. And it was font size 14. It was right out to the edges. It was the most words you've ever seen on a slide ever. And I thought, isn't it funny that at the time I was balancing that need to get everything out there and show them everything I knew with accessibility, and wanting to get all the information across and wanting to demonstrate that actually outweighed accessibility, even for me who've been in the space for years. So it's really interesting to see that even in the job that we do, we're still finding areas where we're still learning and we're still growing in that space. Next slide, please. So tip number 1, we're talking here about designing for inclusion from the outset. We're not talking about like retrofitting. So as Helen shared earlier, building accessibility in from the start isn't just best practice, it's business sense. We could see those products that were designed with inclusion in mind that work for everyone. There's a quote within the space, and I cannot off the top of my head remember who it comes from, but it says essentially, when we design for the edges, we get the middle for free. If we include everybody in that design process, everything comes along with it. We're not going to make it inaccessible for non-disabled or neurotypical people if we're being inclusive in product design. Retrofitting often means tearing apart what's already been built. It's expensive, it's inefficient, and it can damage user trust at the end of the day. So think of it like building a home, right? You wouldn't build a home and then add your windows as an afterthought. So we're thinking about building access, not rebuilding as much as we can. Think about how hard and how expensive it would be if we were adding windows after we've completed the build of a house. And that's how essential inclusion and accessibility and being able to access a service or a product is for your disabled employees. So starting with inclusion helps you meet legal requirements. Yeah, absolutely. But most importantly, it shows that commitment to every single user's experience. Even, as I said, the most disability smart organisations are still facing challenges in this space. It's not a reason to relax. It's a call to lead in this space and be part of that change. As Helen said, there's only 19% of organisations focusing on this. Why would we not be part of that 19%? Next slide, please. So tip number 2 relates to speaking to users, speaking to our employees before we make changes. And it's particularly important to speak to employees that have a lived experience of disability or a health condition or a neurodiversity. It's easy to assume what needs improving, and it's easy to prioritise, as I mentioned earlier, something that isn't actually the priority when we're thinking about how to improve something. So how does it look? You know, is it flash? Is it up to date in terms of that? Has it got lots of bells and whistles and it's going to be engaging and interesting for most people? Assumptions like that often create new barriers. So before upgrading any system or any product or changing a supplier, go out to your colleagues and ask what works, what doesn't, what do you value, what do you need from this? So for example, your ERGs, your disability ERGs, if you have them in place, they can support with questions like this and be part of shaping that future. If you remove an existing feature because you didn't know that someone depended on it, that's not progress, it's exclusion. So if we remove something or we change something because we think it's going to be new, it's going to be more modern, it's going to be more interesting, we're actually then excluding that person from being able to access that product. Many people experience barriers. So we're not just talking about, you know, strict sort of legal definitions of disability. We're talking about people with temporary or fluctuating conditions, or people managing fatigue or stress. They may all benefit from this accessible design. And being person-centered in procurement, as I said before, it really gives you that competitive edge. It helps to build loyalty within your teams. It helps to meet diverse needs. It helps to attract talent who know that they'll be heard and considered when changes are being made. We often hear in this space, nothing about us without us, and that couldn't apply more than when we're either building or buying in a new product or service. So if you want something to be accessible and inclusive for your disabled colleagues, you need to involve them in that process, particularly when it comes to change. Next slide, please. And this one goes into that in a little bit more. You know, we're talking about involving disabled users throughout the entire procurement process. So we want feedback on accessibility and usability at every stage. So this is design to development to review to testing. It's not just at the end. The example of, you know, building a house and not building your windows, it's so difficult to go back and do it at the very end. But more often than not, we see organizations where, user testing is built in, but it's built in when it's all been completed and signed off, and any changes that we then need to make, we have to go back and do. It's not about checking a compliance box of, yes, I've done user testing. It's about, what does that lived usability of this product or service look like? It's not a one-off checkpoint. It's really ongoing dialogue. So design, develop, review, test, and repeat. It's going to help with retention as well. It's going to help with keeping colleagues engaged in their role and engaged in the products and services that they're accessing. It saves time to involve people. It saves time and it saves money. So from a business sense point of view, it absolutely makes sense to involve people as early on as possible. Procurement is one of the biggest missed opportunities in disability inclusion. So this is the moment to kind of lead by example. We're making sure that that usability is built in. It's not bolted on at the end. Next slide, please. So another tip and another thing that you can consider doing or supporting your organisation to do is asking your suppliers to prove that they understand disability inclusion and help them to grow and help them on that journey if they don't. Remember that your brand is on the product, regardless of whether or not you made it. Your brand is on the product, your name is on that, your reputation is on that. Procurement shouldn't ever just be seen as a transaction. Who you choose to work with and who you pay to build products and services for you is a direct reflection of your values, your culture, and your responsibilities to your teams and your people. Inclusive suppliers do give you that competitive edge. And if they're not there yet, bring them on the journey with you. Make that inclusion a partnership. Make it part of the conversation with your suppliers. You can ask for evidence of accessible and inclusive delivery. And if it's not there, ask how you can support them to build it. What insights can you give them? How can you get your partner organisations into a position where they're also providing, you know, access and inclusion for their own disabled colleagues? So this is legacy work. This is what leadership in this space looks like. The suppliers that you invest in today are the ones that are going to help you shape your future and shape the future marketplace. It's not about buying products. It's about creating progress and creating inclusion in that space. And tip number 5. So I've rattled through these, and I hope that I've provided enough information on them. But and another thing that you can do, particularly if you're a leader in your organisation, is show that commitment from the top. Make it really visible. Nothing changes in an organisation unless leaders speak up and set the tone. You know, we know how much work people do in our D&I teams, in our ERGs. We know that there's so much work going on there. Until there is senior buy-in and until there is senior executive leadership disseminating that out to the organisation, it's really hard for things to change. When inclusion is seen as a procurement priority, as opposed to like an afterthought or a nice to have, the culture will follow. And a statement from a senior leader isn't just a symbolic thing. It's actually giving permission and real weight and urgency and importance to procurement as a focus when it comes to disability inclusion. It tells your procurement team, your suppliers, and your whole workforce that this really matters, and it really matters to us. It matters as much as the things that we build internally. It matters as much as the people we hire internally, because it is part of your experience with us as an employee. The strongest organisations are the ones where inclusion just flows through everything. So that means that we go from CEO vision to supplier onboarding to line management to inclusive recruitment to adjustments. It flows through all elements of the organisation, and procurement is a really big part of that, the biggest part for some organisations. So the key kind of takeaway is that we start with the message and then follow with action. So if you're a leader and you want to get this conversation out there, start with the message, start with telling people what the commitment is, make inclusive procurement part of your brand and your reputation and your legacy as an organisation, but also as an individual, make it part of who you are and who you are in this space. Thank you very much. I'm going to hang around at the end for some questions, if anybody does have any, so feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll come back to them, or do hang on at the end and ask me anything. But I'm now going to hand us over to Martin, and Martin's going to take us through how Sage have brought accessible and inclusive procurement into the IT space with a case study. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thanks, Katie. Could we go to the next slide, please? Hi, everybody. My name is Martin Foames. I'm one of the 3 internal enterprise architects at Sage. I'm a white male. I have short salt and pepper hair, and I have a scar on the right side of my cheek from a spider-related incident many years ago, which I'll, if you're interested, I'll tell you later. I'm wearing clear rimmed reading glasses. I'm wearing a blue and white horizontally striped polo shirt. I've been with Sage now for just over 8 years, working across the people, finance, legal, procurement, well, pretty much everything bar sales and marketing domains globally for Sage. My role is pretty much to look at the simplification and unification of our services and software platforms. My background is in solution architecture predominantly, but I started in development many years ago. Today I'm going to talk us through what's often overlooked, and I'm going to reinforce pretty much everything Katie's just said. And this is so important that I got quite emotional watching that video at the very beginning. So I sort of resolutely believe that we should be doing this. So hopefully I'll get that message across to you as well. I'll try and keep this light, having just said what I said, and practical where possible. So if we can move to the next slide. So the agenda, here's the roadmap that we'll be talking through. I'll try and define from an IT perspective, accessibility and usability. It's mostly what you have heard before, but there's a slight nuance that I'll try and bring out. And especially the role IT plays in that. And then we'll dive into how we embed these principles into procurement and how we work with them. And I'll spend a bit of time on the practical stuff, what works, what I found doesn't, and how we can do things better. Next slide, please. So I know you've heard this definition earlier in this presentation, but I wanted to clarify what it means from an IT perspective. Usability is about making systems and services easy and satisfying to use. Accessibility ensures those systems work for people with a wide range of abilities. A system can be usable, but not accessible. And that's important. We need to make it accessible. And usually the more usable for everyone, the more usable it will be for across the board. So usability and accessibility tend to go hand in hand, but the accessibility part tends to take a back seat. And that's what needs to change. And that's what we're looking at here. If we can move to the next slide, please. So why should we care? Well, we should care because it's the right thing to do. Equity, inclusion, diversity, but also because it's the smart thing to do. It reduces our legal risk. It improves user experience. It potentially enhances our brand as people sing the praises of whether you're a developer or whether you're an internal IT department. Excuse me. And let's be honest, accessible systems are often just better systems. Next slide, please. So the IT lens, IT plays a huge role in the IT systems. We often evaluate the vendor claims. We ensure compatibility. we try and embed across systems. A lot of time people focus on an individual solution, and a lot of my job is about taking a solution and making it work across the whole estate. So we have to think about how the whole journey works for a particular colleague. We don't just look at the system that we're bringing in, we work out how that integrates and how that works with everything on our estate. It's about the journey and the experience. Now, how do we do that? Well, we do that predominantly by making sure that we work closely with the vendors. So our stakeholders will be asking for a solution, a missing capability often, and we will provide the non-functional requirements. That's what those NFRs are. And we will then be working to make sure that all of the requirements that aren't just about the capability the stakeholder needs are also included in those requirements as part of that functional requirement specification. So we're trying to shape the experience every colleague has and the tools we use across the whole piece. That's the important part of that. So we can go to the next slide, please. Now, I just put some things on the screen here. There's a lot to navigate. I don't expect anybody to really go through any of these in any detail. I just wanted to say that it's a bit of an alphabet soup. It's a maze, but the message is clear. Accessibility isn't optional. There's an awful lot of regulation and compliance that needs to be addressed, and that, if nothing else, should be a driving factor for you to invest the time in doing and looking at these processes. Next slide, please. So let's get practical. Accessibility and usability should be the part of every stage of procurement. As Katie was saying earlier, it's not just an afterthought. We should start with accessibility in our needs assessment. We've got to involve diverse users early, and especially those with disabilities. They'll spot issues that we might miss. Don't just take a vendor's word for things. That's an important one that we've often been caught out and try to do our best with now. Make accessibility provable where we can. Look for voluntary product assessment templates. That's what the sort of jargon will be if you're going into the background on this. Test results, real user feedback. Make accessibility testing part of your evaluation. And then bake that accessibility into your contract with those vendors. Be clear about the expectations that you expect, the consequences for non-compliance, and support commitments. So we need to really make sure that we've got that nailed down so that we can go back if required. Seamless implementation. We have to work closely with the vendors because often, and that's the difference with me, I'm not just building a product, I'm often bringing in a solution. And so it has to work across our estate. It has to work with and integrate with many systems, and that journey has to be accessible. And it has to be easy for users to really report issues that they find as well. Accessibility isn't a one and done. I think Katie mentioned something along this. Review policies regularly, gather feedback, stay up to date with the standards. Those standards are always changing, so we need to make sure that we keep an eye on what's going on with them. This isn't about perfection. This is all about progress, and every step we make makes a difference. Next slide, please. So how do we make this stick? Well, it starts with awareness. We talk about it, we share stories, we make it part of how we work. We set expectations, we make sure everyone knows what good looks like and what's required. Don't just evaluate a product. Evaluation is of the supplier as much as the product. Do they understand accessibility? Are they committed to it? Sage includes a section in any RFP derived from the Business Disability Forum, the technology task force. And that helps us frame the questions to ensure that the vendors provide the appropriate information that we're looking for. This is a game changer for all of our users internally. We involve them in testing where we can. Helen touched on a framework for an additional product to enable the accessibility. And as she said, that was an afterthought, a plug-in when we've done something wrong. And that's what we try and do. We try not to do things wrong to begin with. We don't compromise at the beginning. We sometimes do have to compromise, but then we'll work as hard as we can to get things right. And it's often surprising. The goal isn't just to tick a box. This is to create systems that work for everyone. And that's what we're trying to do. Next slide, please. So the key takeaways, I think from my perspective, it's to start early. We don't just tag accessibility on at the end. We have to think holistically. We have to consider the whole colleague experience throughout the whole of our estate. We have to hold vendors accountable. We have to make it contractual. We have to make them take notice of what we want and then to be accountable when they don't deliver up to our highest standards. And we have to keep improving because accessibility is a journey, it's not a destination. Next slide, please. So there would have been some questions there. I just want to say thank you for listening. I don't normally go for slides off a script. I had to script this slightly because I was way off when I went through those slides without a script. So hopefully you'll forgive me for having jotted down what I was going to say. And hopefully there's some practical ideas and maybe a little bit of inspiration for you there too. I'm happy to take any questions afterwards or at the end. And I'd like to now have the pleasure of handing over the baton to Ruby, who's going to share some examples that are a little more accessible to everyone. Thank you, Ruby.
Thanks, Martin. Hi, everyone. I'm Ruby Elliott, a procurement apprentice at Sage. Visually, I have blondish, brownish hair, brown eyes, and I'm wearing a white shirt. It's great to be here. And as Martin said, today we're going to be touching on small changes that can make a really big difference. And hopefully we can all apply to our work. So to start with something really quite simple, the slides that we're presenting on today, when we were preparing for the event, we reviewed the original slide templates and they weren't actually fully accessible. The colour contrast on the text to the branding wasn't great for standing out with the colour contrast. So we made some quick improvements for today's slides to meet the accessibility standards. But this is definitely just the beginning. It's inspired a bit of a redesign for the SPP template slides and a bit of a learning journey. Which is kind of what Martin said earlier. It's not about perfection, it's about progress and making those small changes to eventually have that big difference. Some other changes that we made were adding alt text to images and marking images as decorative as well for the slides. Next slide, please. So the main project that I wanted to touch on is how we made our procurement intranet page more accessible. So we asked ourselves, how can we make this space easier for everyone to use? Here are a few of the changes that we made. So if you just next slide, please. We marked decorative images properly so screen readers don't get overwhelmed. We improved colour contrast to make text easier to read. We standardised page layouts to support cognitive accessibility. And we rewrote vague link text, so no more click here, so users know exactly what to expect when they're opening a link. They're definitely small tweaks, and to be totally transparent, they probably took half an hour in total to implement once we'd had those initial checks and picked up on what we could do. But the overall difference in which they make is huge for someone who needs them. If you go back to the other slide for me, please. So some other examples. are colour coding effectively, and there's some tips along the bottom if you do want to look through these slides of effective colour coding and not effective colour coding, making sure that tables have labels and the columns are basically labelled and clear for those who use screen readers. So altogether, these are small tweaks, but together they create a much more inclusive experience. So if you are wondering where to start small. Run an accessibility check or ask someone who uses assistive tech what works for them. You don't need to be an expert to make a difference. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ruby, and thanks to all the speakers for some fantastic presentations and insights. Joe, do you want to introduce yourself and run the Q&A?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Will. And thank you to all of you who have spoken so far today. It's been very interesting and time has flown by. In the interest of time, we have a couple of minutes left. And for those of you that weren't here right at the start of the journey, I am co-chair of the UK chapter of SPP and work alongside Will, Claire, and the rest of our team. So, in terms of, we had one question here, which is about which accessibility standards and frameworks should be referenced and required when procuring digital products and services to ensure compliance and usability for all our users, including people with disabilities. Martin, is that one that you want to start with?
Yes, more than happy to. I listed some of the main contenders on one of my slides, so having a read through those is important, but it depends what the question is really trying to drive out. Are they looking for products that they're developing? Are they looking at how they reference other people's products? We do both at Sage, obviously. We build products for customers. And we also have to work with our vendors when they don't meet those standards so that they don't meet the needs of our customers. A good example of that at the moment, we're working with our subscription management platform who aren't providing the cards in a screen readable fashion. So our customers can't use a screen reader to see which cards are available for them to pay us. So we're working with a vendor to get to that. Now, they may not have seen that or gone to that level of detail, but we do, and we're bringing that up with them. Not sure whether that answers the question, but I'm more than happy to go through afterwards and highlight some of the policies and guidelines that we review.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is it worth pulling back up that one slide with regard to legislations and regulations, if we can just flip back onto that one.
So this is a good place to start. Everybody looks at the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. That's the primary focus for everybody. But a lot of the time, the other ones get overlooked. And certainly that's why I put them on here, because there's too much focus on the web contents. There are a lot of other guidelines and compliances, and that's what I wanted to bring out with this slide.
Cool. Thank you, Martin. Katie, have you got anything else to add to any of that from your perspective?
So I was just about to put the links in the chat to them, but yeah, exactly like Martin said, these EU standard ones, WCAG guidelines, and particularly, yeah, the EU standard for ICT accessibility. I'll pop the links. I've got them ready, so I'll pop them into the chat now. But they're your main ones to explore. And then Business Disability Forum website, you don't have to be a member or a partner, but we do have some free resources on there as well. We have an A to Z of disability, so if you want to head over there and see under inclusive communications as well, we will have some resources based on kind of our experiences and also based on our research that we've done in this space, so there's some available there as well.
Brilliant. Alex, I don't know whether you're on the call, if you want to ask your question directly. Ruby, I know you've answered some of it. Alex, are you on the call at all? Not sure whether you can actually mute. We've got a question here with regard to Ruby. I don't know whether you could just go through again just a couple of sort of top tips for people to take away in terms of guidelines, just slightly more slowly this time, just for a couple of bits, that changes that they can make, so everyone could walk away with a couple of tweaks that they could make to their PowerPoint decks or descriptions at the start of every meeting that they do.
Yeah, so for the slides themselves, there's a tool within Microsoft PowerPoint that you can run an accessibility check. So it's a built-in tool. You don't need any additional software. It's essentially Imagine spell check, but for accessibility. So it'll break down every slide on small changes that you can make so that things can appear more accessible, making sure you haven't forgot to, mark an image as decorative or forget any alt text. Another top tip would be, if there are images within your presentation, if you press onto the image, you can add alt text into the image, and just add a clear descriptive heading as to exactly what's within the image, so that those who can see it and those who cannot have exactly the same kind of fair experience of viewing the slides as well. Another one, like I touched on before, would just be checking the colour contrast. So making sure the text stands out from the background and that the colours aren't too similar, because that can be really hard to view for those with visual impairments.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ruby. That's great. There is a general one here from Rashid in terms of, is there anyone on the call in general who provides any job opportunities to disabled, so the skills or abilities to go in vain? Katie, I don't know whether you've got any comments with regard to that, or any way you can signpost people to?
In terms of it depending on the kind of purpose of the question, depending on if you're looking for a new job or a new company to join, something like that, there are specific job boards that only advertise roles from organisations who are disability inclusive. The other thing that you can look at for in terms of who's providing those opportunities, if you're in the UK, looking at who is disability confident level 3, that information is freely available on gov.co.uk. These organisations, in order to be considered disability confident level 3, so disability confident leaders, will have all signed up to a offer of an interview scheme for disabled applicants, but they have also had to be validated and evidenced clearly that they have great processes in place in terms of recruitment, retention, adjustments for their disabled employees and for new disabled people joining their organisation. And the other thing you can look at on our website, we've got all of our members and partners listed, so everybody that's working with us in terms of, if they're hiring, they are also good, good ports of call, and you can kind of talk about, it's great to see that you're a member of Business Disability Forum, or great to see that you're engaged in this space, and seeing what they're talking about from that, if that makes sense.
Brilliant. Thank you. We're going to leave it there in the interests of time, to give everyone a couple of minutes back in terms of the rest of their afternoon. Will, I'm going to hand over to you and Claire just for the final closing.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a huge thank you to all of the speakers. I've certainly learned a huge amount today. So thank you very much. And Claire, I'll let you say the final goodbyes.
Well, I have nothing really to add to other than to what Will just said. Thank you to all the presenters today. I said at the beginning that when Helen introduced this topic to my team, everyone left just really inspired and energized that this is something that we can do and we should do and we absolutely have to do. And I hope you've got some practical takeaways today to take this back into your organizations and spread the accessibility sort of love, I guess, for accessibility. And really, as Ruby's shown, there are small things that we can all do and the bigger things embedding into our processes. But I really hope that today is a starting point for many of you who've joined today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.